I live in a military town, so everyone here is either in the military like my husband and I, or they're locals. Backwoods redneck type you find near the Bible Belt. Most of the general population is pretty poor. A lot of homeless. A lot of, well, there's no nice way to put it, white trash type folk. I live near a Walmart that I usually go shopping at, and during the day it's filled with your usual Walmart shoppers. At night, however, it's usually full of weirdos. Some normal people there, of course, just trying to grab last-minute groceries or medicine or whatever, but some people who just don't have anywhere else to be, or they're high or drunk, and Walmart is open 24/7, so they just come in to hang out and like it's some kind of damn arcade or something. Anyway, it was like 11:30 at night, and I realized my daughter was out of formula. I have to make her bottles for the day every morning for daycare, so I had to go get formula before morning. I told my husband I'd be back in a few minutes and drove down the road. In the baby aisle, I grabbed her formula and stopped to look at a cute dress for her. I was looking through the baby clothes when I saw someone out of the corner of my eye, and I felt the hairs on my arm stand up. I glanced at him, and then did a double take. This man was standing there, just staring at me. He didn't seem to be bothered by the fact that I noticed him. I did this weird nervous fake laugh and said something like, "Oh, these are so cute, huh?" He didn't say anything. He just kind of smirked and kept staring. The dude was like a few inches taller than me, maybe 5'9", white, with long hair, and he looked either homeless or severely down on his luck. He had one hand on the crotch of his pants, kind of nonchalantly, like it just rested there. He was maybe 6 feet away from me. I started to get nervous and felt my palms start sweating. I said something dumb about having a good night and just kind of fast walked away. But in my haste to get away from him, I turned left toward the back of the store. I decided to grab a 12-pack of Coke Zero in addition to the formula, and then decided to get out of there. I hadn't grabbed a cart, so I couldn't really carry much more. On my way back to the front of the store, I heard him shuffling behind me, keeping pace with my speed walk. I tried to calm myself down and write it off as him just going to check out. I got into the 10 items or less line. He got in the line behind me. He had no items, but he pulled a candy bar off the shelf and set it on the counter behind my stuff. At this point, I could smell him, and he stank like body odor and stale beer. I turned my head away from him and tried to move a little closer to the woman in front of me. He moved closer too. Then I felt something brush against my butt cheek. I turned towards him sharply and said, "Hey!" He mumbled an apology. Keep in mind, I'm wearing jeans and a baggy t-shirt. Not that it should matter, but I looked like crap, is what I'm trying to get at. I turned back towards the counter, and the cashier started ringing up my 2 items. 2 seconds later, the man pinched my ass again, hard. At this point, I turned around and told him very loudly to stop touching my ass. He turned red and the cashier froze. She asked if there was a problem. "Yes," I replied. "This guy just pinched my butt, and I don't know him. He's creeping me out." She looked unsure of what to do and asked him to please step away from me before she called security. He did, wordlessly, and then just stood there glaring daggers at me. I pretended I didn't notice and paid for my things. As soon as she bagged up the stuff, I booked out of the store. I got maybe 10 steps into the parking lot when I heard the doors open behind me. Panicking, I turned and saw him marching directly toward me. I bolted. My car was 2 lanes away and I yanked out my keys and unlocked it while I ran. I could hear him behind me, grunting and panting. I felt adrenaline kick in and tears in my eyes. I ran, swinging the bag and the case of soda, flung myself into the driver's seat, and turned the key in the ignition before the door even shut. I threw it in reverse without looking just as he slammed his body into the hood of my car and yelled something. I peeled out of the lot at almost 30 miles an hour, and he flew off my hood and onto the ground. I drove a mile home, going well over the limit, breathing hard and feeling like I was going to hyperventilate. When I got home, I still had chills. I raced inside and locked the door. My husband wanted to go find him and beat his ass, his solution for pretty much anything. But I just wanted to shut the windows and crawl into bed. I don't know what makes people do the things they do. Do they not realize how terrifying they come off? I don't even want to leave my house without mace and a taser and a railgun. I live in a very populated city in approximately a 5-mile radius of my house. There's at least 3 major grocery stores, one of which is Walmart. Being a 16-year-old girl, I visit Walmart regularly if I need notebooks or something for school, or if I want to browse makeup and things of that sort. I've never been uncomfortable going shopping by myself. I actually enjoy it, and I've never had any bad experiences being on my own. Until one day, a few months back. On this particular day, my parents were working and my little brother was at a baseball game, so I had been home alone all day. I needed body wash and a new lanyard for school. The school I attend requires that we wear IDs around our necks on a lanyard. I think most high schools are doing this now and it's become more common. Anyway, mine broke the Friday before, so that was my main reason for going out. I got to Walmart and parked, like I had 100 times before, went in, and went straight to the purse section where the lanyards were. I walked down the aisle, and there was a man looking at wallets hanging on the display. I didn't think much of it. He was probably in his mid-50s, average height and weight, wearing jeans and a brown t-shirt. He just looked like an old grandpa.
"Hi there,"
he said with a big grin. Hi, I said with a grin back.
"How are you today?"
I'm good, how are you? I said, still browsing for a lanyard I liked.
"Great, I'm just doing some shopping today."
Another big smile. I thought it was weird that he explained that he was shopping, since I could clearly see him looking at all the wallets on the racks, and I could have assumed he was shopping. I decided it was nothing and moved on my way. I found what I needed and made my way over to the body wash. I was in no rush to be anywhere, so I was leisurely walking up and down the aisle, smelling anything that sounded interesting. When he walked by the aisle, I was in and smiled again. At this point, I was a little uneasy. I've always been taught to trust my gut instinct, and something just didn't feel right. I had never had a conversation with anyone in this Walmart before, and now it seemed that this man was following me. I texted a friend of mine to tell her that I thought I was being followed and where I was as a precautionary measure. I decided that maybe it was a coincidence. I mean, he could have needed soap too, and continued on with my shopping. I went a few aisles up to face wash, and then, when I had what I needed, I walked around the corner where I ran into him for the 3rd time.
"Excuse me, young lady. Can I tell you something?"
Yeah?
"You are very beautiful."
Oh, thank you. I was very uncomfortable at this point.
"Are you married?"
Mind yourself that I'm only 16 and definitely didn't look old enough to be married. No.
"Me either,"
he said with a grin that turned my heart to ice and made my stomach turn.
"Do you have a boyfriend?"
Yeah. I stammered as I forced a smile on my face to try and hide my fear. I didn't have a boyfriend at the time. He began to speak again when a man, probably 17 or 18, standing in the aisle perpendicular to us, looking at cologne, walked over and said, "Yeah, she does. She's with me." He gave me the biggest smile and stood super close to me as if he was the boyfriend I had said yes to having.
"Oh, I figured,"
said the man. He seemed very uncomfortable at the presence of another male.
"Good luck to you too."
And with that, he walked away. I turned towards the man and thanked him for coming to my rescue. He said he could tell by the tone in my voice and look on my face something was up, and I was hoping I would play along with him. He watched me check out to make sure the man didn't follow me out of the store, and I was cautious before turning onto my street since I lived so close to the store. That was the last I saw of either of them. I have no idea what the old man's intentions were, but sometimes you just know in your gut that something is wrong. And that day, I knew. Something about him was terrifying and sinister. I'm so grateful for the guy who helped me out. But I hope I never see that old man I saw in Walmart ever again. While standing in line at Walmart this morning, I found myself behind a man who had bought some rather strange items. The cashier seemed unaffected by his choice of purchases, but the guy in front of me seemed intent on talking about it. As I stood there waiting to buy a pair of socks, I watched the rather jovial man lead the following items into the conveyor belt: a dog collar, a pack of peanut butter crackers, a box of condoms, a bottle of lube, 50 feet of paracord, an electric turkey cutter, trash bags, duct tape, and a stuffed teddy bear. The man struck up a conversation with the cashier that went a bit like this.
I'm going to be having some fun today.
Uh-huh.
I used to use twine, but it broke a bit too easy, or they'd chew out of it. The paracord is nifty.
Your total is $57.43, sir.
Yep. Gonna have me a whole heck of a lot of fun.
I went through the line without a word and grabbed my bags, hoping to catch up with the man. I followed him into the parking lot where I found him climbing into a minivan with the child's seat up front. Sitting there was a sleeping toddler. He started petting the kid's head, and I heard him say,
Yup, we're gonna have a lot of fun today, kiddo.
He drove off and I called the police. After taking my report and otherwise brushing me off, they left, and I went home. It was at this point I turned on the midday news and saw an Amber Alert for the very same kid I saw in the man's minivan. I called the police again, but they haven't been able to find him. I apologize to whomever is listening to this for my brash insensitivity. I was never intending for her to get hurt. She was the only thing that kept me level-headed and sane toward the final days of my treatment. I have finally come to full realization of the full extent of what I've done. Recently, I've been contemplating all these ideas throughout my head. There was no denying. I was the death of her. She had the most glorious, radiant appearance and a smile that could brighten the most dreary days. But that was the problem. Her smile. Sometimes you couldn't tell whether she was truly happy or just miserable. From the day I met her, stranded and alone in the abandoned super Walmart where I was previously employed, I knew there was something oddly significant about her. I had this hopeless, cynical feeling about every other girl and every other relationship I've ever had, but remarkably, I felt as if she was honestly something different. Every year on the anniversary of October 1st, the day we met, we approached each other there, until of course, they tore it down and inevitably both of us had to find a new meeting place. In its place, they built a superhighway. I drove across it every day on my way to work at my abysmal job. I hated my work, and my work hated me. All my coworkers made rude comments about me, and on days that I wasn't there, I had this strange conviction that they were all discussing me and my performance behind my back. Most likely, I was right. When Walmart was abandoned, I became unemployed. Not long after, my friend Mike put a good word in for me at this emerging business. It was an office job with decent pay and few benefits, but all around, a satisfactory job. I went home feeling fulfilled and my mother was only happy I was employed and planning on moving out, eventually. She was always riding my ass about how I should get my own place, but that was not the case after we became homeless. with my mother unable to fully support me and my 12-year-old brother. My boss was a fairly odd man. He was very precise with how he wanted things to be run. He was a capitalist. I knew this as fact. He was a portly gentleman of mid-40s with a receding hairline and Christian conservative fundamentals. Worst of all, he was hardly ever there, and he somehow magically absorbed much of our company's profit. He came in on a weekly or even monthly basis and always showed up mildly intoxicated, or not at all. Eventually, he stopped showing up entirely. About 3 or 4 days later, I arrived at work to find a note lying arbitrarily on my desk. The note seemed to be written in a frenzied manner. It was half scribbled and illegible, but what I could gather from it was that it was a suicide note. This caused company-wide pandemonium. Dale Jones was dead. This was undeniably apparent. He left us nothing. I sat in the parking lot for hours, lost in thought. But finally, I came to the conclusion that I had to go somewhere. So I went to Walmart, or rather, where Walmart used to be. As I pulled up in my beat-up, rusted-out Oldsmobile, I noticed an abnormality from the edge of the road. It was Dale, or what used to be Dale anyway. I set out to examine his corpse and retrieve whatever money or items he might have concealed on his person. The contents of his pocket were $6 or $7 in pocket change, a memo to himself reminding him to pick up his mother's dry cleaning, a breath mint, and a business card for a local strip club. He had another note crumbled in the back of his pocket. It was incredibly bloodied and torn, but I read what I could and stored it in my memory. It haunts me to this very day. It read, "Finally, I can sleep. The store of death will haunt me no more. I will dream of peaceful things." That was the last and undoubtedly most painful memory I ever had of Dale. It haunted me increasingly. Dale had taken his own life, and I couldn't help but blame myself for this. I never liked Dale, and Dale never liked me. But this fact did not stop me from strangely being affected by Dale's sudden but anomalous death. The therapy made the thoughts go away temporarily, and the Prozac only made me violently ill. I lost contact with the majority of my co-workers after the accident, except, of course, with Mike. Mike was the only friend of whom I could relate with, who wouldn't judge me, and who I could share my true, unadulterated feelings with. Mike was always a close friend of mine since early childhood, and when I was having serious relational issues with my significant other, I could always count on Mike to allow me to crash at his house for a few nights out of the year. But throughout all of this tragedy, my boss's death, my mental illness, and my grandmother's 10-year battle with cancer, she stood near me. Only, I couldn't trust her. I couldn't trust anyone, not even Mike. Especially since he began stealing money from me for his heroin addiction and withholding my grandmother, Carol's medication. This was a definite entanglement in our friendship. She was quite ill towards the end. Her memory started to fade suddenly, and throughout the seizures and life-altering migraines, I stayed next to her. For nights on end, I would pace sleeplessly through the parking lot of the hospital. I could sleep, but I wouldn't dream of it. I was traumatized severely from this experience, and after my grandmother's death, I was never the same. I began experiencing chronic insomnia for months on end, and the death of my boss still haunted my waking memory. They confirmed it was an intentional suicide, but somehow, I had my doubts. Dale seemed to have everything going for him. Let's face it, he was rich. He was one of those petty bourgeois who had pipe dreams of expanding his business into a global empire of capitalistic despair. But they were never fully realized. He left what was left of his former enterprise in bankruptcy. Now that the building had been foreclosed, I chuckled to myself every time I passed a vacuous, godforsaken building. I enjoyed mocking its company motto. It's not a bargain, it's a steal. Not long after, my friend's addiction began spiraling out of control, and I lost contact with him completely. My only friend and love of my life in the whole entirety of my existence was Julie. She was my ray of sunshine on a dreary, downcast day. We kept no secrets from each other. She comforted me during and after my grandmother's death. I felt as if we shared some sort of collective consciousness, if that even makes a shred of sense. That was until the day I found out about her ghost, her haunting past, the scars that never left her. It was the one thing that truly changed her and my perception of her. We entered treatment together as it seemed like the right thing to do. Surprisingly enough, things were looking up for a while. I thought I was getting better. I thought we both were. My insomnia progressively got worse. Things started fading around me. My family virtually disappeared, and I stayed up until dawn most nights with the TV on. The mind-numbing lobotomy called television kept me pacified during my period of internal decay. Our relationship was unsteady. We fought constantly over the most insipid petty shit, and worst of all, the communication that was there had now more or less disappeared. One night, she found me at around 3 a.m, staring blankly at static on the television screen. I was comatose and would not move, despite being called for. "Eric, are you there? Eric?" she had said. Then she just simply switched off the television set and exited the room, reverting back into her own personal nightmare. I wasn't there, physically, maybe, but mentally, I was completely gone. I had imagined myself being somewhere completely different, in a Walmart supercenter, hanging myself in a bathroom stall. I had never planned on hurting her. That part was true. I really did possess feelings for her that were both romantic and sentimental, but I couldn't shake this feeling, the thought echoing throughout the back of my skull.
Kill her, Eric. Dispose of her. She is a nuisance, Eric.
I couldn't escape it. These ideas were engrossing my very being. I could kill her. Finally, killing her became a viable option. This seemed like the only alternative to my present suffering. Dale won't rest until Julie is dead. Dale won't rest until Julie is dead.
Dale won't rest until Julie is dead.
I repeated to myself, as if some sort of Eastern mystic mantra. My memory seems to have faded after this point. I may have blacked out. There was nothing aside from darkness and the tranquil sanguine relief of death. She never woke up the next day. Her body grew lifeless and rigid, just like I had often imagined it would be. I whispered gently into her ear while caressing her petrified limbs and indulging in her congealed blood. "I will meet you at Walmart, my dear." As I write my final entry in this, my diary and only friend, I lie next to my Julie's resting corpse. I confess, I killed her. It was easy, and it seemed like the only other alternative that didn't result in more suffering. Before I conclude, I have one more honest and crucial confession to make. Dale never killed himself. Open letter to the woman at Walmart. I saw you when I walked in. It looked like you had been there a while. My cart was empty save for the soda I threw in as I walked by the sale right inside the door. You already had your cart half full of food, and a crying baby, and another child dragging his feet as he prepared to throw a tantrum. Your son, I assume, he's about 4. I saw your frustration mounting with his behavior. I wasn't following you intentionally. We just both needed breakfast foods, I guess. You bought corn pops, which I agree with your son, are the worst of the breakfast cereals. He wanted Cocoa Puffs. I'm a Frosted Flakes man myself, but I picked Cocoa Puffs too. Next was the chips aisle. You bought pretzels, the small twists, I don't know. I always preferred the rods. The salt ratio is better. I heard you try to hush your child. The baby doesn't know better, but Derek does. You aren't depleting yet. That will come in 3 more aisles. For now, you're stern. I bought the ramen while you buy Campbell's. I share Derek's distaste for tomato soup. It does taste like warm ketchup. His tantrum is growing. He is pulling on the sides of the cart, yelling earthquake and terrifying the baby. You scold him loudly, and he hangs his head. I, too, share a love of natural disasters, but I prefer hurricanes. I like that we named them. It's comforting to give destruction a name. Now I'm following you. I'm interested in Derek's story. I'm so distracted I almost forget to buy crunchy peanut butter. My children, they love the crunchy kind. I love smooth, but a parent's love, right? We all make sacrifices. I see Derek try to sneak Capri Sun into the cart. He isn't very stealthy yet. You yell at him and rip the box out of his hands. Once you scoot forward, I pick up the box and put it in my cart. I'll be honest, I got distracted for a few minutes. I needed to go down the baking aisle. I promised my kids we would make funfetti cake, and I don't know what happened, but when I emerged, you were at the corner where the baby clothes and food met. Derek was crying. You were yelling and almost in tears yourself. You turned and walked away. You left Derek crying as he sank to the floor. You were only going to go a few aisles and turn back, hoping he had learned his lesson. I've seen it before. I understand. But you should never do that. Did you know that Derek has a very feminine face? You let him grow out his hair. I think he would look good as a blonde. Many girls are doing the pixie cut these days. I have an extra dress just his size in my truck. It has Anna and Elsa on it. Kids love Frozen. I could scoop him up and hug him. I'd comfort him. Promise to get him some soda and candy. We would be gone before you got to the appointed turnaround aisle. He would like my red truck. All my kids do. When they open the glove compartment, it is filled with toys. I think Chase left his Game Boy on the seat again. Derek could play with it. Derek is too harsh a name for such a delicate kid. I like Savannah. You see, the Amber Alert will be looking for a boy with shaggy brown hair, blue jacket, gray Batman t-shirt, jeans, and Converse. Savannah won't match. She will love her new brothers and sisters. We're making funfetti cake today. I have too many children right now. It is hard to feed a family of 7. Savannah will have to wait. Hello again, everyone. I have had some interest in my life since my last post. Some people thought I did horrific things to my children that churn my stomach to even think about. I'm not a monster. I love children. I thought that if I came back, you could see that my children are very happy and healthy. Well, pretty soon a very special day is coming up. My oldest, Claire, is turning 13. She won't be a child anymore, and I'm looking for some ways to celebrate. Perhaps you can help me plan the best birthday for my first daughter. I adopted Claire when she was only a few months old. Her mother was unfit to care for her. I lived in New York at the time, and would go to a favorite bakery on Wednesdays when they made almond croissants. I had a typical route I would take and would frequently see a young woman carrying her baby, or putting the child in a stroller. She must have been a single mother. She always looked exhausted and rushed, possibly a first-time mother too. She would forget to buckle the restraints in the stroller, or have the baby out without a jacket. She was trying her best, I suppose, but she just didn't quite have motherhood down yet. One day, when I was walking by, The baby was outside in the stroller, but the mother was nowhere to be seen. It was a very cold day for October, and as usual, the baby was only in a long-sleeve shirt and pants. No jacket, no hats, no mittens, and no blanket to keep her warm. I hung back and watched. I was going to offer the mother a stern warning, then buy the child some clothes. But she didn't come. I must have waited 5 minutes, but it seemed like hours. The child was crying, and it broke my heart. I wasn't going to take the child. But the mother still didn't come, and the crying intensified. So I picked her up, wrapped her in my jacket, and took her home with me. We moved from New York shortly thereafter, and have lived on the road ever since. She was a wonderful baby, calm and happy, by far my easiest child to date. She knows she was adopted from an unfit mother and has never shown any interest in getting to know that woman. I have given her a wonderful life, filled with culture and education. Did you know that many states offer online public education? They do. It's so wonderful to let kids learn at their own pace. Once our brood expanded, we even held science fairs together. Claire is a special kid. I thought she would be an only child for a long time, but I could see that she missed the companionship that a sibling would bring. I can't remember where we were. Ohio, maybe. We were stopping in a town for a few days. They had a nice park, but it was pretty empty. A lot of the time it was just Claire and I. A few days though, a little boy and little girl would join us. They never came with parents and would eye our picnic lunch hungrily. Soon, I was making extra sandwiches and pulling out extra pudding chips and juicy juice. What was meant to be the last day, I finally realized that their clothes had never changed. When I saw the grass stain from jumping off the swing on the little boy's shirt. That night, Claire asked me about her friends. She was worried about them always being hungry, and they told her she couldn't come over because their house wasn't safe. I hadn't noticed the bruises on their dark skin, but Claire had. She asked if we could adopt them, like I adopted her, and thus, our family grew for the first time. But not last time. I had plenty of income doing odd jobs online, lots of art commissions, editing, etc. But I realized that my true passion lies with helping children, and began taking online classes to become a social worker. Claire says she wants to follow in my footsteps when she grows up. She's the one who started our piggy bank tradition. Each child has a piggy bank that they get to paint to match their personality, and they put their allowance in it to save for college. She is so smart and wise for a child. Hers has these lovely blue flowers painted in a crown over the pig's head. I'm sorry, I've been rambling. I just don't get the chance to brag about my family very often. They're all such great kids. I should get back to the important part. Claire's birthday. She loves green and blue, so I was thinking of getting colored paper plates and napkins. Does anyone have a link to some streamers or lanterns in those colors? She loves the movie Tangled, so I was thinking of doing a lantern release for her. I have a Rapunzel dress from the Disney store. I think she'll love it. We already did funfetti cake for the twins, so I was thinking chocolate. We're back on the East Coast at the moment, so if anyone has recommendations for a bakery, I'm all ears. I was thinking of a Publix cake. I usually buy a new game for everyone's birthday and we play as a family. We have Don't Break the Ice, Clue, Monopoly, and Hi-Ho Cherry-O. Do you have any that your family's like? Claire's favorite is Clue. I was thinking of Candyland, but I'm not sure. Is Twister still popular? Anyway, the big surprise I'm going to announce is that Claire is going to space camp. After the party, I'm going to leave George in charge. He's the next oldest at 10. Claire and I will drive off. But we aren't going to space camp. I have a pretty spot picked out. It is surrounded by blue flowers, just like on her piggy bank. I already have the hole dug. No one should disturb us. I bought a beautiful hunting knife. I was thinking of slitting her throat. That seems like the most humane way to do it. A gun just draws too much attention, and I don't know that I can bring myself to bludgeoning her. I don't want her to be scared. I suppose I could choke her, but she is such a lovely child. Well, young woman. And I don't want to mar her last day with ugly bruises. You see, this is why her party must be perfect. It is her last party. I love children. But she won't be a child anymore.